They said they needed space, so you gave it to them. You didn't text. You didn't reach out. You didn't try to explain yourself one more time because this time you weren't willing to beg to be chosen. You went silent. And while on the surface, they seemed unaffected, posting stories, laughing louder, acting colder than before, there was a part of them that could not ignore it. A quiet, unspoken awareness. They noticed. They felt it. Deep down, even as they carried on, they were waiting. Not waiting for an apology. Not waiting for excuses or pleas or explanations. They were waiting for proof. Proof that even though your words had stopped, your care had not. Proof that your silence didn't mean you were gone. It meant you were steady, deliberate, whole. Avoidants are a paradox wrapped in certainty. They fear closeness, yet they rely on it. They avoid intimacy, yet they expect persistence. They want connection without accountability. They want to be chosen without surrendering. And so, when the one who chased finally stops, when the empath finally steps back, the avoidant encounters a truth they rarely anticipate. Silence is a mirror that reflects not the absence of love, but the presence of boundaries. The avoidant fears that reflection, because it exposes a part of them they've spent a lifetime trying to ignore. The part that wanted to be held, truly held, but was conditioned to distrust it. Maybe love once meant chaos. Maybe love once demanded perfection. Maybe love once disappeared when it was most needed. Whatever the origin, they learned early that dependency was dangerous, vulnerability risky, and closeness a trap. So they built walls high, cold, impenetrable walls around the soft, tender parts of themselves. And yet, paradoxically, they expect others to reach them through those walls without ever asking them to step closer. Your silence interrupts that pattern. It confronts the carefully maintained illusion that control is safety. When you stop pursuing, you stop feeding the framework that allowed them to feel powerful. They had grown used to your chasing, to your explanations, to your willingness to bend yourself into the shape they found comfortable. And now none of that exists. Now the quiet they assumed was inconsequential becomes deafening. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. In your absence, they are irritated not by you, but by the revelation that they are incomplete, emotionally unfinished, and dependent on external chaos to feel alive. They feel their own neediness, their own longing, and the discomfort it brings. They did not anticipate the emptiness of stillness, and yet it is there, quiet, waiting, reflecting. The avoidant doesn't always process this consciously. They mask it with distraction, social media, friends, hobbies, outward bravado. They act colder than ever, reinforcing the illusion that they are unaffected. But inside, the mind works in loops, subtle and unrelenting. Memories of you replay in late-night solitude, the way you listened without judgment, the way you showed patience when they were volatile, the way you never demanded but always gave. And in that quiet rehearsal, they recognize something they cannot say. Your absence matters. You mattered. And there is fear. Fear not of losing you entirely, because in their minds, you will always return, but fear of the realization that you may not. Fear of the idea that your love exists outside of their control, outside of their ability to provoke it, to manage it, to earn it. Your stillness is a confrontation with their own shadow, the part Carl Jung described as the whole person. We are not conscious of the disowned aspects that lurk beneath. Composure, wit, and control. It is not punishment. It is revelation. As they scroll through old messages or catch glimpses of your presence in the world, the tension grows. You no longer chase. You no longer explain. You no longer make yourself small to fit into the cracks they offer. And with each passing day, the emotional vacuum becomes unbearable. Not because they miss you. They have conditioned themselves to deny need, but because your silence forces them to face the truth. They relied on your love to validate their illusion of invulnerability. Now that illusion is crumbling. They start to wonder if perhaps they misjudged you. Perhaps your patience was not endless. Perhaps your love was not a resource to exploit, but a force of nature that eventually aligns with itself. And that is terrifying to someone who has spent decades practicing emotional distance as a survival strategy. The avoidant may tell themselves they are unaffected. They may even act as if they are thriving, displaying success, charm, and detachment. Yet there is a subtle shift, a flicker of recognition that they cannot articulate. They feel your absence, and it is not a void to be filled with distractions. It is a quiet confrontation with what they have been avoiding: intimacy, dependence, and the reality that love does not have to be transactional. You, on the other hand, are not simply withdrawing. You are cultivating a different strength, the strength to exist without constant validation, the power to honor your own boundaries, the clarity to understand that your value is inherent, not contingent on their reception. Where once your silence may have been a tactic, now it is an act of reclamation. You are choosing yourself. You are choosing peace. And peace is louder than words. Carl Jung observed, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." In stepping back, in refusing to perform emotional labor for someone unwilling to receive it, you embody this truth. You are no longer defined by the push and pull of their avoidance. You are defined by your presence with yourself, and that presence forces them to reckon, not with you, but with themselves. The avoidance anxiety is not overt. It is subtle, creeping into moments they thought were safe. The quiet in their chest, the tension in their mind, the fleeting moments of self-reflection they quickly dismiss. They are not waiting for you to break. They are waiting for the mirror to disappear. But the mirror does not disappear. And so they wait, resist, rationalize, distract, and deny, all while grappling with a truth they are unprepared to face. Your love was never the threat. Their inability to receive it, their compulsive withdrawal was. Even in their avoidance, there is longing. They may not admit it, not even to themselves, but the tension exists. They remember how soft your love was, how patient, how unwavering. And now that it no longer revolves around their whims, they are forced to confront something they never thought possible: that love can exist outside of control, outside of fear, outside of conditionality. This is the beginning of a reckoning. The reckoning that occurs not through confrontation, not through arguments, not through pleading, but through the quiet assertion of your own worth. It is a subtle rebellion, the kind that does not need drama to be devastating. Your stillness is a declaration: I am here, not to fix you, not to chase you, not to validate your avoidance, but to be whole in my own right. And that wholeness, though silent, speaks volumes. In the quiet you created, a strange alchemy begins to unfold. For the first time, they can't rely on your chase, your explanations, your willingness to make yourself small so they can feel large. The avoidance usual patterns, withdrawal, distraction, emotional opacity, are challenged. Their safety, once constructed from your accessibility and their own distance, is disrupted. And in that disruption, they encounter an unfamiliar sensation: uncertainty. They may not call it fear, but it is. Not the fear of losing you necessarily, but the fear of their own vulnerability being reflected back. They sense that your silence is not a game. It is not leverage. It is not a punishment designed to manipulate or provoke. It is a boundary, and boundaries are foreign terrain to someone who has spent a lifetime managing closeness like a fragile ecosystem. For them, love has always been transactional. Receive enough. Give just enough. Withdraw to maintain control, but your absence refuses the transaction. It offers no terms, no conditions, no bargaining. And that refusal, that simple act of existing in yourself without regard for their avoidance, stirs something they cannot easily articulate. The parts they've hidden, the tender, needy, frightened fragments, begin to surface. You may see no outward sign. Perhaps they maintain the same aloof smile, the same effortless composure, the same carefully curated life. But inside, they are wrestling. Every memory of your patience, every echo of your presence magnifies what they have been avoiding. The recognition that their own fear has dictated the terms of connection far longer than love ever should have. Carl Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And your silence, though it appears passive, functions like a lantern in the avoidance shadow. It does not reach into them with coercion or judgment. It does not demand change. It simply exists, steady, non-negotiable. And in that existence, They are forced to acknowledge the darkness they have long ignored, the fear of being truly known, the terror of needing, the shame of desiring unconditional acceptance. They replay your words in their mind. They recall how you never demanded, how you never shamed them for withdrawing, how you remained patient without compromising your own dignity. That memory, once comforting, now becomes unsettling. For the first time, your love is not a resource to manage. It is an example, an irrefutable illustration that love can exist without conditions, without pursuit, without manipulation. And that truth, however quiet, is devastating. They begin to notice subtle voids where your energy used to be. Notifications left unread, absence from familiar spaces, your laughter no longer filling the edges of their day. They check, they scroll, they reminisce. And in each quiet observation, they feel something they've long denied. Longing. But it is tangled with fear. The longing is uncomfortable because it is not accompanied by the usual leverage, the usual safety net of emotional control. They cannot chase, they cannot provoke, they cannot manipulate the outcome. They are confronted not by your absence, but by their own inability to receive love without resistance. It is in these moments that the avoidant begins to oscillate between denial and recognition. They tell themselves that you have moved on, that you no longer care, that perhaps you never truly did. Yet the subtle, unshakable truth creeps in. You are not chasing them, but you are still whole. You are not pleading for them to return, but your self-possession is undeniable. That contrast, their avoidance against your clarity, is seismic. It shakes the foundation of the strategies they have relied upon for decades. They may start to question, did I ever truly know what it meant to be loved without earning it? Did I ever truly know the weight of being held without conditions? These questions, unspoken and often unconscious, stir tension in their chest. It is a tension they attempt to bury beneath distraction, justification, or rationalization. But unlike before, there is no one to fill the gaps for them, no one to quiet the discomfort of the mirror you have created through your silence. Meanwhile, your own growth accelerates. You discover a liberation that had been obscured by the constant energy required to navigate their avoidance. You realize that you are not responsible for their fear, their inability to connect, or their strategies of emotional distance. You learn to inhabit your own nervous system without relying on their presence for validation. Every quiet moment reinforces something profound. You are enough. You are whole. And this truth, once abstract, becomes embodied. You are no longer defined by the need to be chosen. You are defined by the ability to choose yourself. And while you are discovering this, they are forced to confront their own inability to do the same. They feel the absence of control as a subtle panic. They may not articulate it, may not even recognize it fully, but it is present. Your silence, which they assumed would be temporary, stretches longer and deeper than they anticipated. Each day you remain grounded in your own presence, chips away at their old patterns, destabilizing the familiar balance they had maintained through withdrawal and distance. Carl Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The avoidance, unconscious patterns, long disguised as choice and self-sufficiency, are now unavoidable. Your silence does not provoke them into action, but it removes the distraction of your energy as a buffer. In that void, they confront the very fears that shaped their avoidance. They are left with the raw realization that they cannot escape themselves, and that their fear of closeness was never truly about you. It was about the terror of being seen, of being vulnerable, of being loved without conditions. This is not a battle they can win. There is no strategy that can restore the old equilibrium because the equilibrium itself was built on imbalance. Your absence, your stillness, your refusal to negotiate your worth exposes the fallacy of their control. And as this truth emerges, they feel a disquiet unlike any other. Not anger, not rage, not vengeance, but the quiet, unsettling sensation that the ground beneath them has shifted, that the patterns they depended on no longer function, that their illusions of invulnerability are not just cracked, they are breaking. And here lies the paradox. Even as they resist, as they rationalize, as they distract themselves with 1,000 excuses, they are waiting. waiting for something they cannot name, waiting for you to return to the familiar rhythm, to resume the chase, to restore the old pattern that allowed them to feel safe in their distance. But you do not, and the waiting becomes a confrontation, a reckoning, an invitation to recognize the unprocessed, unacknowledged parts of themselves that they have long avoided. And through all of this, you are no longer the one lost in the cycle. You are not entangled in the anxiety of their avoidance. You are free from the need to prove your worth, free from the exhausting labor of emotional survival, free from the relentless effort to navigate someone else's unhealed fears. In the silence, in the stillness, in the refusal to chase, you have discovered something radical. Love that is not desperate. Love that is not performative. Love that begins with self-possession. The avoidant may never admit this, may never articulate it, may never even consciously recognize it. But deep down, they know. They feel it in fleeting moments, in quiet reflections, in the subtle pangs of absence that no distraction can fully erase. And that knowledge, however repressed, begins to unsettle them in ways that nothing else could. In your silence, you have given yourself peace. In your absence, you have given them a mirror. In this paradox, something profound occurs. The power is no longer in their hands. The dynamic shifts. The game of pursuit and avoidance collapses. And in that collapse, the truth becomes undeniable. Real love, the kind that does not chase, does not manipulate, does not perform. It simply exists. Time passes, days become weeks, weeks become months. And in the rhythm of your silence, a new reality emerges, not just for you, but for them. The avoidant is no longer interacting with the same version of you who once chased, explained, and bent themselves to preserve connection. That person is gone. In their place is someone whole, present, and unyielding. Someone whose love does not depend on performance, whose patience is not infinite, whose worth is intrinsic. At first, they may feel relief. Relief that you are not pressuring, not demanding, not overflowing with the intensity they've long associated with discomfort. But the relief is fleeting, because embedded within it is an unfamiliar sensation, longing without control. They start to notice gaps they cannot fill themselves. You are absent, yet not absent in the way they expected. You are alive, grounded, moving forward, and existing in yourself without tethering to their avoidance. That is the part that unsettles them. They begin to reflect, often unconsciously, on the moments they pushed away, the times they withdrew just when intimacy became possible, the words they withheld, the emotions they repressed, the small gestures of love they denied themselves. And in this reflection, a subtle guilt emerges, not the kind that demands action, but the kind that quietly disturbs, the kind that gnaws at the unacknowledged parts of the self. They may deny it, rationalize it, or distract themselves, but it is there. This is the point where the avoidant confronts the paradox of their own existence. They fear closeness, yet they crave it. They avoid love, yet they yearn for it. They control, yet they long to be chosen without effort. And now, your silence forces them to sit with this contradiction. The absence of your chase removes the scaffold they relied upon to maintain their illusion of emotional autonomy. Without the familiar patterns, the internal dissonance grows louder, harder to ignore. They start revisiting memories with a sharper awareness. Moments of tenderness, patience, and unconditional care take on a new weight. Every soft word you spoke, every patient pause you offered, every act of empathy becomes a testament to something they cannot replicate. And yet they are caught between acknowledgement and resistance. They cannot admit that your absence matters. They cannot allow themselves to feel dependent, but they feel it all the same. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." In your silence, you are living that privilege. You are rediscovering your voice, your worth, and your freedom. And that very embodiment forces the avoidant to confront what they have avoided for years. The dissonance between the person they project and the person they are beneath the carefully constructed walls. They are forced to reckon with the truth that they have spent a lifetime guarding parts of themselves that long to be known, held, and loved without conditions. They may attempt distraction. They may double down on work, hobbies, or social activity. They may present themselves as thriving, unaffected, immune to the absence that once would have sent them into panic. But distractions only mask for so long. There comes a moment, quiet and unremarkable. When the realization lands, you are not waiting, you are not chasing. You are not offering them the safety net they have always relied upon. And in that realization, a profound tension arises. A tension between the fear of feeling and the desire to be seen. Their internal conflict becomes more nuanced. They begin to recognize the difference between love as control and love as presence. They sense the distinction between connection that demands and connection that simply allows. They remember how it felt to be with you when you were patient, when you held your boundaries, when your love did not require them to perform, and that memory is both haunting and clarifying. It illuminates what they've been missing. Not the thrill of pursuit, not the satisfaction of control, but the quiet, steady assurance of being held without conditions, yet they resist fully facing it. Avoidance is, after all, their coping mechanism. Vulnerability feels dangerous, exposure feels risky, and trust feels impossible without an exit strategy. So they oscillate, reflection followed by distraction, acknowledgement followed by denial, longing followed by rationalization. But your silence remains, unyielding, and slowly, subtly, it begins to dissolve the familiar patterns. This is the point where you notice the most profound shift within yourself. You are no longer tethered to their emotional rhythms. You no longer confuse silence with abandonment, distance with disinterest. You no longer mistake inconsistency for depth. In their absence, you discover the radical possibility that love is not a performance, that worth is not earned, and that connection is not a battlefield. Your nervous system settles, your heart rests, your clarity grows, and that clarity, your clarity, shakes the avoidant in ways no argument, no pleading, no begging ever could. They see, even if only subconsciously, that your love never required them to perform, never demanded compliance, never tolerated disrespect. They realize that what they once perceived as your dependence was not weakness, but presence. And that recognition, unaccompanied by your pursuit, is a confrontation with their own emotional poverty, the void they have, cultivated through avoidance. In this slow unraveling, they encounter a fear they cannot articulate, the fear that you might never return to the old patterns, that your love, once available on demand, is no longer theirs to command, that your patience, once infinite, is now anchored in self-respect rather than accommodation. And that is more unsettling than any rejection because it exposes a truth they have long avoided. They cannot control your presence, and they cannot manufacture your absence. This is where the avoidant begins to confront their shadow, the parts of themselves they've hidden from the world, the parts they have denied even to themselves, the fear of vulnerability, the need for control, the terror of being loved without conditions, all surface quietly in moments they cannot distract. And in these moments, they are forced to reckon with what Carl Jung called, the shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. They may resist, they may rationalize, they may even retreat further, but the reckoning is unavoidable. Meanwhile, you are no longer engaged in the struggle. You are free to inhabit your own wholeness, to practice presence without compromise, to love without attachment to outcome. Your boundaries are firm, your worth undeniable, your peace intact. And that freedom, while silent, speaks more profoundly than any words ever could. The avoidant begins to sense, however faintly, that what they feared, the loss of control, the disruption of their patterns, the exposure of their unprocessed self, cannot be repaired by tactics or avoidance. You are not returning to the old rhythm. You are not recreating the familiar cycle. And in that realization, the tension grows. It is a quiet, persistent pressure, the kind that seeps into their thoughts, their memories, and their quietest moments. And here lies the ultimate irony. Your absence, your refusal to chase, your unwavering self-possession does not punish them. It liberates them. Not in the way they expect, not immediately, not without resistance, but it begins to illuminate a path they have avoided, a path toward confronting themselves, toward integrating their shadow, toward recognizing that love need not be transactional, and that connection can exist without control. By now, something has shifted entirely. The cycle that once defined your relationship the chase, the withdrawal, the overgiving. The avoidance is broken. Your silence, once a source of doubt and discomfort, has transformed into clarity, strength, and liberation. You are no longer orbiting their wound. You are no longer waiting for validation, forgiveness, or recognition. You are standing firmly in your own presence, and in that presence lies the quiet power they cannot ignore. For the avoidant, this is disorienting. The familiar rhythm that once offered control, the push-pull dynamic, the emotional dependency they relied upon, is gone. They may still attempt the old patterns, a glance in your direction, a message crafted with caution, a fleeting attempt at connection, but you are no longer available in the ways you once were. Your absence is not temporary. Your silence is not negotiation. It is a declaration, and in this declaration, they feel something they have long avoided. Loss. Not the loss of power, not the loss of control, but the loss of the real you, the soft, patient, loving, whole version of yourself they once took for granted. They may never say it. They may never admit it. They may continue to guard themselves with the armor of indifference. Yet they feel it. That quiet absence echoes louder than any message could. And in feeling it, they are confronted with a truth that has long terrified them. Love can exist without leverage, without manipulation, without conditionality. And in that truth, there is a reflection of themselves they cannot escape. Meanwhile, you are free from the exhausting cycle of emotional labor that never returned. Your effort equally. Free from confusion, from longing, from the subtle self-doubt that comes from chasing someone incapable of meeting you where you are. Free to cultivate presence, peace, and clarity in your own life. You have discovered something profound. Love does not require sacrifice that diminishes you. Love does not demand performance to be valid. Love is not earned by chasing or appeasing. Love begins with you, your boundaries, your worth, your wholeness. Carl Jung reminds us, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. And in your silence, in your stillness, you have awoken. You no longer look to them for validation or reassurance. You no longer confuse absence with rejection. You have chosen yourself, and in that choice lies a power that cannot be taken away. The avoidant, confronted with this new reality, experiences what they have long feared, a love that exists independent of their control, independent of their readiness, independent of their avoidance. They may resist, they may rationalize, they may distract themselves with logic or activity, but the truth is undeniable. Your freedom and your self-possession cannot be undone by their fear, and that is the ultimate reckoning. In this moment, a subtle transformation occurs on both sides. For you, it is the reclamation of your time, energy, and emotional sovereignty. For them, it is the recognition, silent, uncomfortable, and unavoidable. That connection requires openness, accountability, and presence. They have long relied on your pursuit to stabilize their world. Without it, they are left to confront themselves. Without it, they feel the weight of the love they refuse to fully receive. Your journey illustrates something essential. You were never asking for too much. You were never wrong for wanting presence, for seeking patience, for desiring a love that does not punish or manipulate. The fault was never yours. It was the mismatch, the dynamic that kept you giving and them withdrawing. And in stepping back, in refusing to chase, you broke the cycle. You disrupted the illusion that love is conditional, that worth is earned, that patience is infinite. You created a new paradigm, self-possession, clarity, and peace. And here is the subtle truth the avoidant will never articulate. Your silence is not rejection. It is revelation. Your absence is not punishment. It is a mirror. They feel the weight of your detachment because it is a reflection of what they have denied. Their need to be seen, their desire to be held, their fear of being truly known. Your silence is not strategy. It is sovereignty. It is proof that love does not require compromise of self. And that is a truth more powerful than any pursuit, any argument, or any manipulation could ever convey. For the empath, the lesson is equally profound. You discover that the intensity of longing, the ache of attachment, the weight of unreciprocated care, it was never a measure of your capacity to love. It was a reflection of the mismatch. And by choosing yourself, by embracing the stillness that once terrified you, You awaken to a reality where love is expansive, not conditional, nurturing, not performative, sustaining, not draining. This is the ultimate liberation. The avoidance no longer dictates your emotional landscape. The uncertainty, the longing, the tension, they exist, but only as reminders of how far you have come. You are no longer defined by someone else's fear, just as you are no longer shaped by someone else's patterns. Your voice, your presence, your love, they are yours, unbounded and unnegotiable. And in that liberation, you realize something radical. Love is never about winning someone over. It is about standing firmly in your own worth and letting the universe, or life itself, respond as it will. Your silence has become more than absence. It has become a statement, a declaration of self-worth, a testament to emotional clarity, a quiet rebellion against the patterns that once bound you. And in that rebellion you find peace, freedom, and the courage to no longer seek validation outside yourself. So to those listening now, remember this. Your energy is sacred. Your love is powerful. And your presence, grounded in clarity and self-possession, is louder than any argument, any chase, any pleading. Do not give it to someone who fears it. Do not compromise it for someone who cannot hold it. Step into your own wholeness, embrace the stillness, and let your life reflect the truth. You are enough without conditions, without compromise, without chase. If this message resonates with you, if you are ready to embrace your own freedom and step into your power, make sure to subscribe, join this journey of clarity, self-possession, and emotional liberation, and allow yourself to witness the quiet strength that comes from choosing yourself first. There is power in stillness, in boundaries, and in the refusal to chase what cannot meet you halfway. And by subscribing, you will continue to explore these truths, to awaken to your worth, and to live a life unbound by fear or avoidance. Because ultimately, the most profound love you will ever experience begins with yourself, and nothing, not avoidance, not fear, not absence, can take that away.